So for the last Resident Evil games I reviewed, minus Village, I usually start off my reviews by talking about the original before going into the remake. But considering that there is no remake for this game yet, this review will be completely based on the original, which is not good. So Resident Evil 5 came out in 2009, and after the success of the masterpiece that was Resident Evil 4, people were extremely thrilled to play the next installment. And then the game came out. So for all the people who thought that this game was going to be anything like Resident Evil 4,
you have been cheated and lied to!
I knew it!
when this game came out, people were mad as hell. Resident Evil 5 feels like if they took all the elements from 4, and then at some point they just forgot it was a Resident Evil game. Because Resident Evil is known for being one of the most iconic horror franchises of all time. And the only thing scary in Resident Evil 5 is Sheva's AI in single player.
Another one?
So in this game, you play as Chris Redfield and Sheva Alomar, as they are working for the Bioterrorism Security Assessment Alliance, or the BSAA for short. And during this time, the Africans attack, the white man runs, and they find out that Albert Wesker is trying to unleash this new virus into the world known as Ouroboros. So now Chris and Sheva's goal is to stop Wesker from unleashing Ouroboros into the public. Okay, so let's talk about the good things in this game first. Sheva's hot. Okay, honestly, there are good things in this game, but if I had to say what was the biggest highlight in this game, it would be without a shadow of a doubt DC Douglas's performance as Albert Wesker. Albert Wesker has been in many Resident Evil games at this point, but he's always been in the background, plotting behind the scenes. But in this game, he is at the forefront and shows everyone and their mama why he is the main villain of the Resident Evil franchise. There is a reason why everyone who has ever played a Resident Evil game loves to impersonate this man's voice. Because from the way he walks, the way he talks, and the way he delivers every single line, he can turn even the most basic sentence into the most iconic line.
Ouroboros will be released into the atmosphere, ensuring complete global saturation.
Honestly, the only reason Chris and Sheva beat him was because of plot armor. Because with all of the shit that this man can do, they would have been dead 10 times over if he really tried to kill them.
Oh, goddamn, holy shit.
But even though Wesker being a badass gains a few points for this game, I also had to take points off because they killed off the main villain of the Resident Evil franchise in this game, you stupid fucks! And honestly, there really isn't much good in this game, and whenever something good or interesting does happen in this game, they immediately ruin it. Like for instance, Alright, so if you didn't realize that after I just spoiled that Wesker dies in this game, I'm going to spoil the whole game. And the reason why is because I do not recommend you play this game unless you play in multiplayer. If you have a friend, play this game with them. And if they don't want to play, then you threaten them at gunpoint. Because I would rather threaten someone to play this with me than to ever go near single player with AI Sheva. But anyway, there was actually one thing that I felt like could have been interesting if they did it right. And that was the reveal of Jill Valentine working with Albert Wesker. But that shit ended immediately after it was revealed. Look, I'm not saying that Jill should have actually turned to the dark side, but I wish they would have made Chris and the player believe that she did. They should have revealed that Jill was working with Wesker earlier in the game, and then make Chris and the player believe that Jill was doing this out of her own volition. So now Chris has to determine whether or not he has what it takes to kill his closest friend. Or potential lover? I don't know, Chris is dumb. You see, this is why I prefer Leon over Chris, because Leon made it clear from day one that no other woman is getting in the way of his China girl. Not even Claire, no matter how much her brother keeps pushing it. Now, I have heard a lot of people say that this is the worst Resident Evil game of all time. And if we're just going by the mainline titles, then yeah, it most definitely is. But if we are counting every Resident Evil game, then this is definitely not the worst. And those who don't believe that obviously haven't played Operation Raccoon City. But the reason a lot of fans say that this game is the worst is because unlike the previous Resident Evil games, this game that is based in a horror franchise is not scary at all. But honestly, my problem with the game isn't even the fact that it wasn't scary. My problem with the game is the fact that it was boring as hell. The areas and the enemies in this game are extremely dull, especially if you compare it to the enemies and areas in Resident Evil 4. There were only a few times in this game where me and my buddy Tavon were up against a horde of enemies and it actually felt intense. And this is why I recommend that if you do play this game, either get a friend or don't play it at all. Because the most fun that I did have in the game was just me and my buddy Tavon just dicking around.
That's such a nonchalant way to die. What? She looked confused as she was dying.
What's going on? What? Yeah, that was a weird reaction. And maybe, just maybe, the gameplay could have salvaged my thoughts thus far. But it's just the same gameplay as Resident Evil 4, but worse. And do you want to know why it's worse? Because one, there's no merchant in the game, and two, the inventory in this game is so itty bitty. Why does a vest take up an inventory slot? But maybe, just maybe, the soundtrack can save this game. Resident Evil is known for having some bangers. I'm not gonna lie, with the exception of Winds of Madness, Sad But True, and the ending OST, I legit can't remember a single in-game track. I'm literally trying to remember any other soundtrack from this game. I got nothing. There is no doubt about it. Resident Evil 5 is one of the worst Resident Evil games of all time. Because even though there are worse Resident Evil games out there, the fact that this is a mainline title is the biggest disrespect to the Resident Evil franchise. And not even Albert Wesker could save it. But with all that said, Resident Evil 5 gave us some tolerable gameplay, boring atmosphere, terrible single player, and a villain that should have been a better game. The only thing that keeps this from getting my lowest seal is the fact that it can be fun in multiplayer if you have an ass clown of a friend. I have only played this game 2 times in my lifetime, and even though there were some funny moments, I do not see myself playing it a 3rd time. If I ever want to look at any scenes from Albert Wesker in this game, I'll just go on YouTube. But with all that said, my final verdict for Resident Evil 5 is the caution seal of approval.